So, I wrote this poem about 2 years ago. I wrote this poem about 2 years ago in on June 27th, 2023. I wrote this poem like 2 years ago. It was back in 2023 that I wrote it, but it's still very relevant to my life living in a low income housing, projects and kind of ghetto low income housing projects, where I live, and having to deal with certain things throughout time to time and every so often each year. I have to deal with certain things like housing issues, or things falling apart or etc. But I kind of wrote this poem about basically what I was feeling and how I was feeling about that situation. So I wanted to kind of just because it's still relevant to this day, and I don't think I've ever really done a video about the actual poem. Although I think the name is going to change. I wrote it as the Low Income Housing Low Points at HUD by poem by Carl Nicholas Urso. But I may change the actual title. I mean, there's a couple things in there that need to really be edited, but I'm gonna try to read it as best I can so you can actually kind of understand how I feel about just my living situations in general, about how I live in this low income hectic life occasionally. People, I've been a very blessed person. Don't get me wrong. I've been a very blessed person in life. I've had a lot of opportunities and I've had a lot of blessings. But one of my downfalls occasionally, or one of my struggles I have to put up with and deal with, even though I've had a lot of blessings and I've been blessed with a lot of different things, is that I live in the most crappiest of housing projects and the most crappiest of situations for living conditions that I do not I do not always like it, and it's not always good for my mental health. So a part of me would move if I could afford anything else. If I could afford anything else, or if I could afford to move, I would. But nobody knows how to really move me, and nobody really knows what I can actually afford if I do move. That everybody says I'm kind of stuck here in these conditions and putting up with it until I can actually figure out how to move me, or I actually forcefully get evicted or something. Somehow I get evicted forcefully or something, and I'm not told I can't live here anymore, which means I'm going to be struggling, financially just to be able to afford a place to live. But anyways, I'm going to read this poem called "Low Income Housing Low Points at HUD." Poem by Carl Nicholas Urso, and this is a poem I wrote about the housing authority and the where I live in Torrington, Connecticut. So, I don't want to have to worry about bugs, floods, elevators breaking down, nasty rude neighbors, looking for a hope, looking for a savior. To feel like being threatened and my soul is in danger. I would have to spend the holidays alone and not have no one to date when I look through my Facebook dating on my phone. Having a decent and safe home, a peace of mind where my stuff doesn't get damaged or destroyed, even if it means away my tarot cards or something I love, even my collectible toys. I would love to be able to paint and have freedom and peace of mind from any stalkers and people who want to get me in trouble with another complaint. I don't. If only I was moving on now and would not have to wait, because I'm concerned that staying here would lead to worser fates. All that glitters is not gold in the arts, even if I get there to read my soul, and even if I get there to read and bear my soul in my heart, and feeling in my art, and share my feelings in my art. I know my presence at times is not well received. Not to get into a political race war or be left out in my time of need. To have people, family, and friends back near, where would where I wouldn't even wanted it out of selfish reasons or child or out of fear. God, I'm hoping that a change back home is near. Now, I'm not sure if I will be happy with what I find. happy that if I moved back or and possibly wasted my time. But there's got to be more. There's got to be some good to live. I may be getting a new chance to find a wife and have a kid, to see if I can move on from the past and the things I did when I was really sick and mentally ill and a kid, to build a better relationship with my mother. God knows, at times it can be very hard to show her I care for her and love her, but I really do, and we only get one mother. That much is true, and I really miss her home cooked meals too. But my Torrington day, but I wish my Torrington days were through, and I got out of this low income housing zoo. So it was a little choppy there because I kind of still have to do some editing and fix some words. But that was a poem I wrote about the HUD housing and the low income housing, which is still very relevant, and just going through different things like, pipes breaking and floods and elevators breaking down and all these things that happen at low income housing that I really do not like to live here. I mean, I would like to really move for my own benefit, my mental health, and etc. Because I actually have mental health issues. The reason why I'm in a mental health recovery, or stayed in a mental health recovery, besides having autism and stuff like that. Part of the reasons why I stayed in a mental health recovery is because of what happened in this, in this apartment, and it happened to me when I first moved in here, and had to do with all this trauma and stuff I was going through within life and living in this apartment and having to go through different things within this building and etc. that I've gone through throughout several years now. I've gone through different things, and it's like some people are like, when is it going to give, and when are you going to get out of there, when are you going to move, when are you going to be able to get to a better living situation. My parents are just like, like up the chain about me living here. They really want me to move because they really don't think I should be living here at all, because it's a really terrible place with, like, all the things that happen, and all the nasty crappy shit that goes down. So but that's my poem. That's my poem. It's about HUD housing. I might change the title. I gotta kind of go in and kind of change it to make it sound better, but that's kind of what I kind of wanted to sound like. So I hope that's understandable, and it actually was a poem I read. It's the first poem I read for 2025. It was a poem I wrote in 2023, but it's the first poem I read for 2025 that I don't think I've read too much before, except I think I read it in one Facebook Live where I was doing a bunch of poems. But that's one of my poems that my first poem I'm going to read for 2025 that I don't think I've read too often, that still is very relevant to my life and how I feel like I'm struggling. So it even goes back to some things that I was dealing with at the time that I kind of closed out at the new year. I kind of closed some of the stuff out at the new year that I was talking about in there. So some of that was closed out, but it still kind of talked about those struggles of how I was struggling, and how I kind of, but it doesn't say I closed it out at the new year. That was just something I kind of did, afterwards, because obviously there's, the New Year, New Year's Eve or day happened 2 years after this poem was written. So, but anyways, peace.